Our next speaker is Patricia Zell, one of Billy's dear friends. Patricia?
Thank you, Bobby. Billy had an expression that he used from time to time. He'd say, "Take it easy, take it easy." For all the troubled hearts that are out there today, that are in this room and around the world, Billy would say, "Take it easy." Our Quinault pastor talked to us about a time for every season. Billy would be joyful today to see all the beautiful faces that are here to honor him. He would be full of joy to see all these beautiful flowers that surround him and all the life expression that is here to honor him. It's hard to take a measure of a giant like Billy, a measure of a man. But we've been learning from him all these years. It's almost as though we enrolled in a school or a university, the University of Billy Frank's values and life ways. The first thing we learned from Billy, and that we felt all the time, was his love. Billy is the personification, the embodiment of love. And I'm sure that everyone who is hearing these words today has been touched by Billy's love, has been touched by Billy's hugs, the wonderful Billy hugs, and all the ways in which he expressed love in every single day of his life, in so many ways, to so many people. He taught us the lesson of his life of compassion and kindness to others. There was no one that Billy wouldn't reach out to help and care for, and genuinely, as we all know, genuinely care for. Billy was all about taking care of others, not just family, not just friends, not just communities, but strangers, all things wild and free, the salmon and the eagles, the Puget Sound, the climate of our planet. Billy was all about taking care of others. And then there's Billy's courage and bravery. Who amongst us would face violence and arrest scores and scores of times and put ourselves in harm's way because of something that we believe in, that Billy believed in? And Billy's courage and bravery was given expression every single day, whether he was out on the waters or in the courtroom or in a jail. And then there was Billy's leadership and advocacy. And we all know him as a leader here. But over time, he became a leader across Indian country, a leader, a national leader, an international leader. And there are people all over the world whose lives he's touched. And all over the world, people understand why he advocates to save the fish, to save the salmon, to save our planet, to save our humanity. We've taken Billy into our hearts long ago. But we knew the day would come when we'd have to graduate from this University of Billy Frank's values and life ways. And now it's our time. It's our time to carry forward all of these things about this beautiful man who touched our lives so deeply. We'll take his words, his life ways, his values, his love, his compassion, his kindness, his bravery. We take that into our souls. We take it into our spirits. And we take these things to our families, to our children, to our grandchildren, to all those that will come after us. And we will share everything that he's taught us. And by that means, we will carry forward his legacy and carry on his love. Billy used to say 3 words: we are family. We are all family. And I think there are 3 other words that Billy would heartily endorse. They come from the Bible, 1 Corinthians. Those 3 words are that love never ends. We love you, Billy man, and our love for you will never end.
Our next speaker is Tom Keefe, another of Billy's friends.
Maisel, Willie and Peg, Sugar, Tanu, and their family. I'm Irish. I'm not good at these things. Billy once said, "Nobody can replace my life," but I couldn't replace my dad's life. I couldn't replace my grandpa's and beyond. It's a different time. We think out 100, 200 years. It takes 1,000 years for a cedar tree to grow. That's how our thinking is. I don't have any plans on leaving this place. It's interesting to note that Willie Frank was born in 1879, 10 years before statehood, and less than 20 years after the hanging of Chief Nisqually, Chief Leschi of the Nisquallys, who was his father's uncle. And so you look at the passage of time, and we hear time is like a river. Willie Frank was born in 1879, and about 50 years later, Billy was born in 1931, and approximately 50 years after that, Willie III was born. And I tried to do a little math, and I figured that we're here today celebrating in a state nearly, or coming up on 200 years of Billy Franks in the state of Washington. I used to tell people who would ask me about Billy, the best way to understand him was to try to understand his father, Willie, who was a great hero of the fishing rights struggle, who was pushed off his 205-acre allotment to make way for Fort Lewis and refused to take the money and go away and insisted on the government buying him a little 6-acre wagon crossing on the Nisqually River that became Frank's Landing. And for our state, Frank's Landing became what Little Rock and Selma were in the civil rights struggle in the South. I always enjoyed listening to Billy describe his life along the river. He didn't talk a lot about his childhood, but when he did, he always talked about Mr. Salmon and Mr. Beaver and his dam up above the river, and Mr. Bear, who needed some salmon, and Mr. Eagle and what he could see and the things that were making him unhappy, Mr. Hawk. And I one time told Billy, I said, you know, Billy, you talk about these animals as if they're people. It was like being at a Pacific Northwest version of The Wind in the Willows. And he said, well, Thomas, I do talk about them like they're people, but you know what? When we're not around, they talk about us like we were animals. And so when you look at that quote on the front of the program where Billy talked about what he believed in, I think that is a great statement of his view of our relationship with our fellow creatures. Late in his life, Willie Frank observed, I always say the Nisqually Indian was living in paradise before the white man came. Everything grew just natural. There were lots of roots, wild onions, turnips, and wild carrots. and one little black root that made all the others taste sweet. There was game, grouse, wild berries, and everything. That's the world that Billy Frank fought to try to, if not completely restore, at least not to lose what was left of it. And I found it really interesting and ironic, looking at our recent history, to see that it took a federal judge to listen to a star witness, a nearly 100-year-old Nisqually man named Willie Frank, before someone finally got it about the treaty rights in the Pacific Northwest. And it was wonderful to see in the aftermath of that decision that the person who emerged as the leader who helped to articulate the salmon's position, Mr. Salmon, and to pull the tribes together in a common goal was Willie Frank's son, Bill Frank Jr. I have a treasured a memento of my own, which is a picture that I took once when we were down at Frank's Landing, and it's Billy's dad, Billy, and Willie. And the thing that has always struck me about that photo is the three faces are identical. It could be the picture of one person at three different phases in his life. And I remember shortly after Willie was born on, I think it was Easter Sunday, back in 1982, when Grandpa Frank gave Willie his Indian name, his own Indian name. He passed it on to Willie. The name was Kalashkit. And I asked Billy once about that name, and Billy said that the name Kalashkit was a Nisqually word for that instant between night and the coming of day, when it's neither night nor day. And it's a time of calm and peace where the two halves of a circle meet. Just like his dad, Billy's journey ended in the spring, right around the time the mighty Chinook returned to the rivers of the Pacific Northwest. He arose, showered, dressed, and got ready for another day of speaking out for the salmon. For all of his 83 years, he never slowed down, rested, or stopped any more than the Nisqually River could ever stop. But even a mighty cedar tree has a life that begins and ends. Although Billy has traveled on, I'm sure that those of us who've gathered here today to say farewell can, for the rest of our lives, arise before the first light, catch a glimpse of Billy at that fleeting moment in time each day the Nisqually Indians call Kalashkit. I'll see you there, Billy.
Our next speaker is the chairman of our tribe, David Lopeman, and he's joined with James Peters, who's a councilman as well for Squaxin Island Tribe. And I will say that when I spoke to him right after the family had called, Dave Lopeman said,